Danny Carter sat in his small repair shop on Station 12, eating a cold sandwich and staring at the job board on his screen. Most of the requests were the usual stuff: broken water recyclers, faulty air filters. Nothing that paid well enough to matter. He was 32 years old and tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep could fix. It was the tiredness that came from working 16-hour days and still not having enough money to pay for his sister's medical treatment back on Earth. His sister Emma was only 19. She had a rare blood disease that required expensive treatments every month. Danny had promised their dying mother that he would take care of her. That promise had led him to leave Earth 6 years ago and become a freelance repair technician in the outer systems. Humans were still new to the galactic community. They had only joined the Galactic Coalition 20 years ago, and most alien species saw them as primitive, useful for cheap labor and simple technical work, but nothing more. Danny had learned to ignore the insults. He just needed the money. His communicator buzzed. The name on the screen made him pause. It was Lou Brennan, his dispatcher, and the closest thing he had to a friend out here. "Danny, you sitting down?" Lou's rough voice came through the speaker. "I'm always sitting down." "What is it?" "Got a job request for you. A strange one. The kind that either makes you rich or gets you killed." Danny put down his sandwich. "I'm listening. It's from the Velithran Empire." Danny felt his stomach tighten. The Velithrans were one of the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They were insectoid beings with hard shells and cold, calculating minds. They had built an empire that spanned hundreds of worlds, and they were known for one thing above all else. They hated outsiders. No alien had been allowed on their homeworld in over 400 years. "What do they want with a human technician?" Danny asked. "They have some kind of ancient device on their planet. Climate control system built by their ancestors thousands of years ago. It's failing, and apparently none of their own people know how to fix it." Lou paused. "They've heard that humans are good at figuring out old technology. They want you specifically because of your work on the Kethni ruins last year." Danny remembered that job. He had spent 3 months on a dead world, repairing machines that were older than human civilization. It had nearly killed him, but he had succeeded where others had failed. "What's the pay?" He asked. Lou told him the number. Danny almost dropped his communicator. It was enough to pay for Emma's treatments for the next 10 years. It was enough to bring her to one of the fancy medical stations, where they could actually cure her instead of just keeping her alive. "There has to be a catch," Danny said. "The catch is that you'll be on Velithra Prime, surrounded by aliens who think humans are disgusting animals. If you make one mistake, if you offend them in any way, they might just kill you and dump your body in space." Danny thought about Emma. He thought about the last message she had sent him, trying to sound cheerful, even though he could see how thin and pale she had become. "I'll take the job," he said. 2 weeks later, Danny stood in the cargo hold of a Velithran transport ship, watching the stars blur past the small window. The ship was cold and smelled like chemicals. The Velithran guards who had escorted him aboard had not spoken a single word to him. They just stared at him with their compound eyes, their mandibles clicking with what Danny assumed was disgust. He had packed a light, a toolkit, some spare parts, a few changes of clothes, and a photograph of Emma. Everything else he owned fit in a single bag. The journey took 3 days. Danny spent most of it alone in a small room, eating the bland food cubes the Velithrans had provided and studying everything he could find about their technology. There was not much information available. The Velithrans kept their secrets well. On the 3rd day, the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Danny got his first look at Velithra Prime. Thought it should have been beautiful. The planet had once been covered in vast forests and crystal-clear oceans, according to the old records. But now it looked sick. The forests were brown and dying. The oceans had shrunk to half their original size. A thick haze covered the atmosphere, and even from orbit, Danny could see the massive storms raging across the surface. The climate device was failing, and the planet was dying with it. The transport landed in the capital city, and Danny was escorted out by a squad of armed guards. The air outside was hot and thick, making it hard to breathe. The Lythran civilians watched him from the sides of the street, their eyes following him with a mixture of curiosity and hostility. Danny kept his head down and followed the guards. They led him through streets lined with towering buildings made of some kind of black crystal. Everything was elegant and ancient, but there was a sense of decay underneath the beauty. Cracks in the walls, dust on the windows, the smell of something rotting. Finally, they reached the palace. It rose from the center of the city like a massive spike of crystal, catching the dim sunlight and scattering it in rainbow patterns. It was the most beautiful building Danny had ever seen. And at the top of that palace, waiting for him, was the queen of the Velithran Empire. Danny took a deep breath. He was just a repair technician from Earth. He fixed broken machines. He was not a diplomat or a soldier or anyone important. But right now, he might be the only person in the galaxy who could save this world. He straightened his shoulders and walked toward the palace entrance. The guards closed in around him, their weapons ready. Whatever happened next, there was no turning back. 3 days passed. Danny worked from early morning until late at night, mapping every part of the damaged device. He barely slept. The heat in the underground chamber was getting worse, and he knew that time was running out. On the third day, he was assigned a new assistant, a young Velithran named Krell. Krell was smaller than the other Velithrans, with a shell that was more green than blue. He was clearly nervous around Danny, keeping his distance and speaking only when spoken to. But unlike the other engineers, he actually answered Danny's questions properly. "This symbol here," Danny said, pointing to a marking on one of the ancient panels. "What does it mean?" Krell leaned closer to look. "It is from the old language. It means flow, I think. Or maybe current. The direction of energy." Danny nodded. That made sense. He had been trying to trace the power flow through the system, and now he had a better idea of how it worked. "Thank you," he said. "That helps a lot." Krell looked surprised. "You are thanking me? Why wouldn't I? The other humans I have heard about. They say you are all rude and primitive. They say you care only about yourselves." Danny smiled sadly. "Some humans are like that. Some aren't. We're not all the same. Just like I'm guessing not all Velithrans are the same." Krell was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I think I understand." Over the next 2 days, Krell became Danny's main helper. The young Velithran was smart and eager to learn. He asked questions about human technology, about Earth, about how Danny had learned to repair machines. Danny answered as best he could, and slowly, a strange friendship began to form. On the 5th day, Danny finally found the proof he needed. He had traced the sabotage to a specific terminal in the palace. The security codes used to access the terminal belonged to Commander Vrix. Danny sat back and stared at the data on his screen. Vrix had done this. The commander who stood at the Queen's side, who commanded her armies, had deliberately sabotaged the device that kept his own planet alive. But why? Danny showed the evidence to Krell. The young Velithran's face went pale. "This cannot be true," Krell whispered. "Commander Vrix is a hero. He has served the Queen for 50 years. The evidence doesn't lie," Danny said. "But I need your help. I don't know who else might be involved. If I go to the Queen alone, Vrix might have me killed before I can say anything." Krell hesitated. Then he straightened his shoulders. "I will help you. This is my world. If someone is trying to destroy it, I want to know why." That evening, a servant brought Danny his dinner. It was the same bland food he had been eating all week. But tonight there was something extra. A small cake made from some kind of sweet grain. Danny was about to take a bite when Krell burst into his room. "Wait!" Krell grabbed the cake from Danny's hand. "Do not eat this." "What? Why?" Krell sniffed the cake carefully. His compound eyes widened. "Poison. I can smell it. This is nightshade extract from the southern forests. It is deadly to Velithrans." Danny stared at the innocent-looking cake. Someone had just tried to kill him. "Lucky for me, I'm not Velithran," Danny said grimly. They tested the cake later with some equipment from the device chamber. The poison was indeed deadly to Velithrans, but Danny's human biology would have processed it differently. He would have been very sick for a few days, but he probably would have survived. Still, the message was clear. Someone wanted him gone. The next morning, Danny requested an audience with the Queen. Krell came with him, carrying the evidence they had gathered. Queen Zithara listened in silence as Danny explained everything. The sabotage, the security codes, the attempted poisoning. Her face remained expressionless throughout, but Danny could see her 4 hands gripping the arms of her throne tightly. When he finished, she spoke one word. "Vrix." Commander Vrix stepped forward from his place beside the throne. "Your Majesty, this is obviously a trick. The human is trying to divide us." The evidence speaks clearly, Commander." The Queen's voice was like ice. "You used your own codes. You did not even try to hide your guilt." Vrix's expression changed. The mask of loyalty fell away, and Danny saw the hatred underneath. "You have made us weak," Vrix spat. "For centuries, we were the greatest power in the galaxy. Now you invite primitive creatures into our sacred places. You ask them for help like beggars. I would rather watch this world die than see it saved by human hands." Guards moved toward Vrix, but he was faster. He pulled out a communicator and shouted a command into it. Seconds later, the ground shook. An explosion echoed from somewhere deep below. "My followers have just destroyed another section of the device," Vrix said, smiling. "You may have caught me, but I have won. This world will die, and the Velithran Empire will die with it. Better extinction than humiliation." The guards seized Vrix and dragged him away, but Danny was not watching. He was already running toward the device chamber, his heart pounding. When he arrived, he found chaos. An entire section of the main control unit had been blown apart. Fires burned in the wreckage, and emergency teams were struggling to contain the damage. Danny pulled out his scanner and began taking readings. His hands were shaking, but his mind was calm. He had faced impossible situations before. The readings told him everything he needed to know. He walked back to where Krell and the Queen were waiting. Both of them looked at him with desperate hope in their eyes. "How bad is it?" the Queen asked. Danny took a deep breath. "Bad. The explosion accelerated the system failure. At this rate, you have maybe 3 days before the climate system collapses completely. Can you fix it?" Danny looked at the burning wreckage behind him. Then he looked at the Queen's face, at the fear she was trying to hide. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I'm going to try." The throne room was vast and cold. Pillars of black crystal rose toward a ceiling so high that Danny could barely see it. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, and Danny could see his own reflection looking small and out of place at the far end of the room. On a throne carved from a single piece of purple crystal sat Queen Zithara. She was larger than the other Velithrans Danny had seen. Her shell was a deep blue color, almost black, and it gleamed like polished metal. Her forearms were folded across her chest, and her compound eyes watched Danny approach with an expression he could not read. Beside her stood a tall Velithran in military armor. His shell was scarred from old battles, and he looked at Danny the way someone might look at an insect they wanted to crush. "So this is the human," the armored Velithran said. His voice was sharp and filled with contempt. "This is what we have been reduced to. begging primitive mammals for help. "Silence, Commander Vrix," the Queen said. Her voice was deep and smooth, like water flowing over stones. "The human is our guest." Vrix made a sound of disgust but said nothing more. Danny stopped at the base of the throne and bowed his head. He had read that this was the proper greeting for Velithran royalty. "Your Majesty, I am Danny Carter. I came to help." The Queen studied him for a long moment. "You are smaller than I expected, and softer. I have heard that humans break easily." "We do," Danny admitted. "But we also heal fast. And we're stubborn." Something flickered in the Queen's eyes. It might have been amusement. "Tell me, human, do you understand why you are here? Your climate device is failing. Your planet is dying. You need someone to fix it. And do you believe you can succeed where our own engineers have failed?" Danny thought carefully before answering. "I don't know yet, but I'll try my best. That's all I can promise." Commander Vrix stepped forward. "This is madness. We are allowing a creature from a primitive world to touch technology built by our sacred ancestors. It is an insult to everything we stand for." "Our sacred ancestors are dead," the Queen said coldly, "and their knowledge died with them. Would you prefer that we join them in extinction, Commander?" Vrix fell silent, but his hatred was obvious. The Queen turned back to Danny. "You will be taken to the device chamber. You will have full access to our records and our remaining engineers. Fix the device, and you will be rewarded beyond your imagination. Fail, and..." She paused. "Well, let us hope you do not fail." Danny was escorted deep underground, through tunnels carved from solid rock. The air grew hotter as they descended, and Danny could feel sweat running down his back. The Velithran guards did not seem bothered by the heat. Finally, they reached the device chamber. Danny stopped and stared. The device was enormous. It filled a cavern the size of a football stadium, a complex mass of pipes and crystals and machinery that hummed with power. Some parts were clearly ancient, covered in strange symbols that Danny did not recognize. Other parts looked newer, like repairs that had been made over the centuries. And right in the center of the device, Danny could see the problem. A section of the main control unit was dark and silent. Something had gone wrong there, something that was causing the entire system to fail. He spent the next several hours examining the damage. The Velithran engineers who had been assigned to help him were not very helpful. They answered his questions with short, hostile responses and made it clear that they did not want him there. But Danny was used to working alone. He crawled through narrow passages, tested connections, and mapped out the system piece by piece. And slowly, he began to understand what had happened. The damage was not natural. Someone had deliberately cut certain wires and removed certain components. The device had been sabotaged. Danny sat back and wiped the sweat from his face. This changed everything. It meant that someone in the palace wanted the planet to die. Someone powerful enough to access this chamber without being caught. He decided not to tell anyone yet. He did not know who he could trust. That night, Danny worked late. Most of the engineers had gone home, and only a few workers remained, doing maintenance on the outer sections of the device. Danny watched them for a while. They were thin and tired, moving slowly in the oppressive heat. One of them stumbled and fell. The others were too exhausted to help. Danny walked over and helped a worker to his feet. The Velithran stared at him with wide eyes, clearly shocked that a human was touching him. "Here," Danny said. He pulled out his water bottle and offered it to the worker. "Drink." The worker hesitated, then took the bottle and drank deeply. Danny gave him one of his food bars as well, the same ones he had brought from the station. "Why?" the worker asked. His voice was weak. "Why would you help me?" Danny shrugged. "Because you needed help." The other workers had stopped to watch. Danny shared his remaining water and food with them as well. It was not much, but it was something. He did not notice the small camera hidden in the ceiling, and he did not know that in her private chambers high above, Queen Zithara was watching him with an expression that was no longer cold. She had expected many things from the human: greed, fear, perhaps even incompetence. She had not expected kindness. For the first time in many years, the queen found herself curious about a creature from another world. This small, soft human had just given away his own food to workers who had treated him like dirt. Perhaps, she thought, there was more to humans than she had believed. Or perhaps this was just another trick. Another game played by a clever primitive. Either way, she would be watching him closely from now on. Danny did not sleep for the next 40 hours. He worked without stopping, crawling through the wreckage, testing every connection, rebuilding destroyed circuits with whatever materials he could find. Krell stayed by his side the entire time, handing him tools and translating ancient symbols. Other Velithrans began to help as well. Word had spread through the city about what Vrix had done and about the human who was trying to save them. Workers who had once looked at Danny with hatred now brought him food and water. Engineers who had refused to speak to him now asked how they could help. On the second day, something unexpected happened. Queen Zithara came to the device chamber. Everyone stopped working and stared. Queens did not leave the palace. It was tradition. It was law. No Velithran ruler had set foot outside those crystal walls in over 200 years. But Zithara walked through the smoke and the dust, her blue shell gleaming in the emergency lights. She stopped in front of Danny, who was covered in grease and so tired he could barely stand. "I came to see for myself," she said. "Show me what you are doing." Danny blinked. "Your Majesty, with respect, this is dangerous. The air down here is bad, and there could be more explosions." "Show me," she repeated. So Danny showed her. He explained the system as best he could, pointing out the ancient technology and the newer repairs. He showed her the damage Vrix's followers had caused and the patches he was building to work around it. Zithara listened carefully. She asked questions that showed she understood more than Danny had expected. And then she did something that shocked everyone present. She took off her royal robe, rolled up her sleeves, and said, "Tell me what to do." "Your Majesty," one of the guards protested. "This is not appropriate. My people are dying," Zithara said coldly. "I will not sit in my palace and wait while others do the work. Now tell me what to do." Danny handed her a welding tool and showed her how to use it. They worked side by side for hours. Zithara was not skilled at repair work, but she learned fast and she did not complain. When she made mistakes, Danny corrected her gently, and she accepted his corrections without anger. During a short break, while they sat together in the darkness, Zithara asked Danny about his home. "Earth," he said, smiling at the memory. "It's a small planet. Blue oceans, green forests, white clouds. Not as advanced as your world, but it's beautiful in its own way. Do you miss it?" "Sometimes. But I left to help my sister. She's sick, and the treatments are expensive. That's why I took this job." Zithara was quiet for a moment. "You came to a world that hates your kind, risked your life among people who would rather see you dead, all for your sister." "She's all I have left," Danny said simply. "Our parents are gone. She's my family." "Family," Zithara repeated, as if tasting the word. "We Velithrans do not think much about family. Our eggs are raised in communal centers. We do not know our parents or our siblings. The Empire is our family. That sounds lonely." Zithara looked at him with something like surprise. "I have never thought of it that way. But perhaps you are right." They returned to work. But something had changed between them. They moved more easily together now, communicating with looks and gestures as much as words. On the third day, with only hours remaining before the complete system failure, Danny made a terrible discovery. One of the critical components was missing. It had been removed from the device before the explosion. Without it, nothing Danny had done would matter. The system could not function. "Where is it?" he asked, his voice tight with desperation. "Where could it be?" Krell checked the records. Commander Vrix. He removed it himself 2 days before his arrest. It was not found when he was captured. "He still has it," Danny said. "Or he hid it somewhere." There was only one way to find out. Danny went to the prison where Vrix was being held. The guards did not want to let him in, but a message from the Queen changed their minds. The cell was small and dark. Vrix sat in the corner, his once proud armor stripped away, his wrists bound in energy chains. He looked up when Danny entered, and a bitter smile crossed his face. "The human hero," Vrix said. "Come to gloat?" "I came for the component you stole. The resonance crystal from the main control unit." Vrix laughed. "Why would I give it to you? I told you. I would rather see this world die than be saved by your kind." Danny stepped closer. "Your people are suffering. Children are dying in the streets from the heat. Old ones are choking on the toxic air. Is your pride really worth their lives?" "You do not understand," Vrix hissed. "I fought for this empire for 50 years. I watched us go from the greatest power in the galaxy to a joke. Other species laugh at us now. They send humans to fix our machines because we cannot do it ourselves. Death is better than such shame." Danny shook his head. "You're wrong. There's no shame in asking for help. There's no shame in admitting you don't know everything. The shame is in being too proud to save the people who trust you." Vrix stared at him. Something flickered in his compound eyes. "Pain, perhaps. Or regret. You really believe that?" he said slowly. "You genuinely believe that helping is more important than pride?" "I'm just a repair technician," Danny said. "I fix broken things. That's all I know how to do. But I've learned that the hardest things to fix are the things people break on purpose, out of anger or fear or pride." A long silence filled the cell. Then Vrix reached beneath the thin mattress of his bed and pulled out a small crystal, glowing with pale blue light. "Take it," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "You are a fool, human. But perhaps you are a brave fool." Danny took the crystal and ran. He had less than 2 hours to save a world. Danny ran through the palace corridors, the crystal clutched tightly in his hand. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but he did not slow down. He could not slow down. Behind him, he heard Krell shouting into a communicator, clearing the path ahead and warning the engineers to prepare for his arrival. The device chamber was chaos when Danny burst through the doors. Alarms were blaring. Warning lights flashed red across every screen. The air was so hot that Danny could barely breathe, and smoke hung in thick clouds near the ceiling. Queen Zithara was there, standing in the middle of the chaos, directing teams of workers with calm authority. When she saw Danny, her eyes went to the crystal in his hand. "You got it," she said. There was no surprise in her voice, only relief. "Vrix gave it to me," Danny said, already moving toward the main control unit. "I don't have time to explain. I need everyone to clear the central platform, now." The workers scattered. Danny climbed into the heart of the machine, squeezing through gaps that were almost too small for his body. The heat was incredible here, like standing inside an oven. Sweat poured down his face, blurring his vision. He found the empty slot where the crystal belonged. It was surrounded by ancient circuitry, some of which he had repaired over the past 3 days. He said a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening and carefully inserted the Crystal. Nothing happened. Danny's heart stopped. Had he been too late? Had the damage been too severe? Then, slowly, the crystal began to glow. A soft hum filled the air, growing louder and louder. The ancient machinery around Danny shuddered and came to life. Lights flickered on across the control panels, one after another, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. Danny climbed out of the machine and collapsed on the platform. He was exhausted beyond words. His body pushed past every limit it had, but he was smiling. The main screen above the platform showed the planet's readings. Temperature dropping, atmospheric toxins decreasing, storm patterns stabilizing. The device was working again. Valithra Prime was going to live. A cheer rose from the workers around him. Valithrans who had never shown any emotion in front of Danny were embracing each other, weeping with relief. Krell ran to Danny and helped him to his feet, his young face shining with joy. Queen Zithora approached slowly. She stopped in front of Danny and looked at him for a long moment. Then, to the shock of everyone present, she bowed her head. "You have saved my world," she said. "You have saved my people. I do not have words to express what this means." Danny shook his head. "I just did my job. That's all." "No." Zithara looked up at him, and Danny saw something in her eyes that he had not seen before. Warmth, respect, perhaps even affection. "You did far more than that. You showed us something we had forgotten. That kindness exists. That strangers can care about each other. That asking for help is not weakness." She took his hand in two of hers. Her grip was gentle, despite the strength Danny knew she possessed. "Come," she said. "There is something I must do." 1 hour later, Danny stood in the throne room, cleaned up and dressed in fine clothes that the servants had provided. The room was filled with Valithran nobles, military leaders, and representatives from every region of the planet. They all stared at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to awe. Queen Zithara stood before her throne, addressing her people. "Today, our world was saved from destruction," she announced. "Not by Valithran hands, but by the hands of a human. A species we have looked down upon. A species we have called primitive and inferior." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We were wrong. Danny Carter came to our world expecting nothing but payment for a job. Instead, he gave us everything. His skills, his time, his compassion. He shared his food with our workers when they were hungry. He risked his life when our own people tried to kill him. He showed us mercy when we showed him none." She turned to Danny and extended her hand. "In the ancient times, before we became isolated and proud, our queens had partners. Chosen ones who stood beside them, not as rulers, but as symbols of trust and alliance. This tradition has been dormant for 500 years. Today, I revive it." Gasps filled the room. Danny's eyes widened. "Danny Carter," Zithara said, her voice ringing through the chamber. "I name you my chosen consort, not as a husband in the way your species understands, but as an eternal partner in peace. Your presence at my side will symbolize the alliance between Valithra and humanity. From this day forward, your people and mine are bound together." Danny's mouth opened, but no words came out. This was not what he had expected. He had come here to fix a machine and earn money for his sister's treatment. He had never imagined anything like this. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a technician. I'm nobody important." Zithara smiled. It was the first time Danny had seen her smile. "You are important to me," she said simply, "and you are important to my people. Will you accept?" Danny thought about Anna back on Earth. He thought about his small repair shop on Station 12. He thought about everything he would be leaving behind, but he also thought about Krell, who had become his friend, about the workers who had shared meals with him, about Zithara, who had worked beside him in the dirt and smoke without complaint. Can I still visit my sister? He asked. You may visit Earth whenever you wish. I will provide a ship for your personal use. Then, yes, I accept. The crowd erupted in cheers. Velithrans who had never shown enthusiasm in their lives were clapping and stamping their feet. Danny saw Krell in the front row, tears streaming down his face. Later that evening, Danny stood on the palace balcony with Zithara. The sky above Velithra Prime was clearing, showing stars that the people had not seen in months. The air was cooler now, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers from the gardens below. What are you thinking? Zithara asked. Danny shook his head and laughed softly. I'm thinking that I came here to repair a device. I never expected any of this. Life rarely goes as we expect. Zithara placed her hand on his. But sometimes the unexpected turns out to be exactly what we needed. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Finally, Danny spoke. So what happens now? Zithara looked at him with those ancient, wise eyes. Now, we build something new. Together. Danny smiled. He was just a repair technician from Earth. He fixed broken things, and somehow, without meaning to, he had helped fix an entire world. Together, he agreed. Above them. The sky continued to clear, revealing a future bright with possibility.